Cultural Inquiry Part 2 with Sophie Yahani and Gina Ko.
Hi, Sophie. Would you like to tell me a little bit about how you teach cultural inquiry?
Okay, so one of the ways that I teach cultural inquiry is in my advanced multicultural counseling course. I actually use the students themselves. So I really believe that once we have, it's part of our own sort of reflection, our own cultural self-awareness. And so we do this at the beginning of the class by building collages. So on the first day of class, we don't know much about each other. We probably know something about each other, but we haven't taken that next step of really knowing each other from from our personal sort of cultural narratives. And so the students come into class and we have magazines, we have newspaper clippings, we have glue, scissors, and posters, and they build basically a collage that says something about who they are
Mm.
without necessarily guiding in terms of specific aspects that they need to identify. The student can pick what they want. And then they go around introducing themselves. And I invite others in the class to ask questions based on what they see and to ask the student to elaborate on that. And inevitably, through the process of building our collages, what will happen is that we locate ourselves, we
Mhm.
say something about our history,
Mm.
and we also share aspects of our cultural identities. It becomes very visibly clear that we're not these fixed individuals, that we have something that tells us about our gender. There's something about our culture. There's something maybe that sometimes about race, our socioeconomic status. It tells us something about some of those salient issues that are present to who we are, that we are wanting and willing to share in that moment with our, in our class with our classmates. And that becomes an easy kind of place for people then to kind of recognize, it's quite easy for me to engage with others in a cultural inquiry in the context of counseling.
Mm. Love it, love it, and the creativity and the coming from themselves, right? And what they choose to include in the collage.
Yes.
Mhm.
And if you've ever engaged in a collage making activity, it's actually a very reflective process. It takes time because one has to kind of really think
Mhm.
about what it is that they want to say, what they want to share.
Mhm.
And of course, we're guided by images. And so that's one aspect of that. And of course, some questions you can ask, what is not present here? That would be important for me to know about you. And so sometimes individuals or counselors are a bit concerned about inquiring, like the initiating an inquiry. But I said, imagine your client as a collage, as somebody who actually has all these aspects of who they are present within them. And from that place of curiosity, that culture desire, that openness, you can begin to ask questions in a number of different ways rather than me giving you a prescription of
Mm.
three questions that are going to take you into a particular place or conversation.
Mhm.
So, of course, it can be tell me your story. Who are you? Where were you born? Where did you go to school? Tell me
Mm.
something about, tell me something that I wouldn't know, that's not on the forms that you've completed, as a
Mm.
way for us to begin to get to know each other.
Mhm.
Sometimes it could be a story, and from this story, you can inquire more about, do they have particular spiritual practices? Is that something that's important to them?
Mhm.
Do they, how do they identify themselves from a racial point of view? What are the races that they identify with,
Mm.
or particular race? Um, what are some of their experiences within their different ethnocultural communities that they belong to? What is their gender identity? It often, the whole point of this is that it should come in a fairly natural way,
Mm.
because again, this is in the context of counseling. It's not a standardized sort of assessment.
Right. Sophie, thank you for sharing these concrete examples and how it can look like in teaching students. And I can imagine how they can bring this learning forward to work with clients as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So thank you for your time today, Sophie.
You're welcome.